Hi there. A frequent question after the House of the Dragon Season 2 premiere was, when did Alicent Hightower start a sexual relationship with Criston Cole of the Kingsguard? And people asking, was this implied to be going on for years, even before her husband died or anything? Officially, no. This is a new thing which has been going on for only a few days in the weeks since Viserys died, and they explain this very clearly in the tie-in podcast that they put out with every episode for free on YouTube. And I'll link to it, but because this is such a frequent question, I want to just read off the transcript I made of this. And if someone's going, oh, you're reading off the transcript from the wiki, well, I'm the guy who made the transcript and posted it into the wiki notes. I'm just finding another way to share it with people. That Liv Cook was very straightforward, as has Fabian Frankel in other context, other interviews, but Olivia was very straightforward and gave a pretty lengthy quote about her thoughts on this, and specifically when it began, and how you really think Alicent is emotionally stunted. She never got to be a teenager. She was married off at 14 to a man old enough to be your father, and this is her experimenting. And I agreed. I felt they made that clear. I mean, they have, if you pay attention to the dialogue, she says things like, oh, we can't do that again. Like, it feels like something new. So, both actors stated, the way we played it, this is something that only recently started since Viserys died. And it isn't really comparable to Rhaenyra potentially committing treason by ruining a marriage alliance. She's single, she's a widow, no one really cares what she does now. It's hypocritical in the sense of, well, you're also violating a Kingsguard's oath, but I've already talked about this in separate videos. I'm not in love with it, but I don't have a problem with it. Okay, Alicent, we have these emotional issues, but rest of this, I'm just going to read off the block quote from Olivia Cook. I can't just put it in due to YouTube copyright laws. I would have just put in the audio clip, but I'm forced to read off the transcript. I'm sorry about that. Rest of this, just block quote. There were many, many discussions. There were bits and bobs. There were longing looks in the later half of last season that were cut out, and different asides to each other. And we know this, that from the archived script stuff that we've been going through, that there were little lines here and there. She's going, oh, Criston is so amazing, or like a line about Criston being devoted to her at the thing in a later episode, at the dinner thing between him and Harold Westerling, criticizing him, which was cut. So this isn't, they're not making it up. We know there were little things that were cut that were meant to be setting this up. But back to her quote. Things were cut out, different asides to each other, and I think young Alicent sort of professes her instant attraction for Criston Cole, even with the on-screen exclamation in the final version that, gods, he's Dornish. That he's part Dornish because he's from the Dornish borderlands, that he's gorgeous. That she felt that was still enough of an indication. The book, it does say, Criston Cole is infamously handsome and the envy of every woman at court, even though as a Kingsguard he's sworn to chastity, but he's gorgeous, and I think that sort of flame for him has sort of lived very quietly in Alicent this whole time. And I think they became closer as she became his personal knight, that he became her personal knight, and he was her sworn protector, and strange things happen in grief and in death. She specifically links it to, apart from saying it's after he died, and it's because she's nuts due to grief. You act strange, and sex is sort of like the antithesis of death. I think she's sort of, even though she's grieving the loss of her husband and still is, she sort of feels liberated from being this caretaker. This was sort of like our headcanon stuff for it. It's not written, it's not from the writers, but it's our headcanon as the actors playing it. But we thought it sort of happened maybe like literally days after the death of Viserys, after his death. And they became closer in Alicent's grief, and I think it's really teenage. She's emotionally stunted, she's mentally a teenager. I think it's really teenage for Alicent. She's never really been able to have a relationship that's born out of passion. She bore all these children when she was herself a child. And you blame her, oh, she's not a good mother. She was forced into marriage at 14. And it's just, she was a child bride. You really can't, that she was too young to be having children like that. she was herself a child, and now it's like, and Olivia Cook says, and now it's like she's on Rumspringa. That's that thing where, I'll link it, it's that thing where Amish teenagers coming of age are allowed to go out and party in the city just to go, okay, look, we're not going to shelter you from this. This is what it's like. Would you like the clean, simple living of being in the Amish country with the Anabaptists and stuff? I know what that is. If you're from another country and don't know what the Rumspringa thing is for the Amish, I'll link it. But I love that Olivia Cook says, this is Alicent's Rumspringa period. And it's like she's lived for other people and she's lived by the rules so exactly that this is just a little thing that she's taking for herself within her grief. And also, neither one phrases it as, oh, this is this cool new romantic relationship. This is her experimenting around as a liberated woman that for years she's been shackled to being the caretaker for an elderly husband who was a good man, but married off as a child at 14, forced to bear so many children so young, and she never had this kind of freedom before, that mentally she is on that level. And it is very teenage, and even as a supporter of Team Black, I don't think this is evil of her. It's just she's human, and she's doing that. Though it is, she herself feels conflicted and guilty about it. So far at least, the writing has been decent on this. But had to block quote this because of copyright rules, but they answered pretty clearly in the official tie-in podcast they released same night. They had the actress come right on and say, in our heads, this was happening like within days of Viserys' death, born out of her grief. This wasn't meant to imply, oh, she's been cheating with him all the time. That's not a thing there. So I hope that cleared that up right away there.